I'm Meredith Kaunitz. I am the founder of Art Play Learn. We are a company that provides both in-person and online education to homeschoolers and actually pretty much anybody who wants to learn at any time. So that's a little bit about who I am. I'm a 30-year education veteran with mostly experience teaching in non-school settings. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. I have a series of Japanese courses that have 5 out of 5 star ratings. So that's my area of expertise. And that's why I'm here today to help you understand better how to choose an online course that's going to actually support your goals as homeschooling parents. So the first thing that you really need to think about is, why do I want to enroll my child in an online class, right? There are all kinds of reasons why people will do that. The first reason is often because you may have multiple children, or you may be working at some point during the day, or have some other kind of responsibility. Maybe you're a caregiver to your parent or some other, we have multiple responsibilities, right? We wear different hats. And so sometimes we need something to engage our child in something that's productive so that we can accomplish something else. And believe me, I'm a working parent. I understand that better than anybody. So that's a really valid reason to have an online class for your child to do. Another one could be that there are just things that you don't feel confident teaching, or maybe you have no experience of whatsoever, right? Maybe your child wants to learn a language that you don't speak, that you've never studied, or they just are really, really interested and obsessed with some area that you've already given them everything that you know about it. And now you just need an expert in that particular field to fill in the gaps, right? Totally valid reason. Another thing that people do is sometimes we just need support, right? We've done everything that we know how to do to help our child acquire a skill or some knowledge. And for whatever reason, what we have isn't getting them across the finish line, right? And that's a totally, once again, totally valid reason, right? I've done it, everybody's done it. Sometimes we need help, and there's no shame in asking for help when you need it. So those are 3 really great reasons why homeschooling parents, and actually non-homeschooling parents, will turn to an online course. But it's important to know what the reason is, because that's going to help you assess whether the course that you're looking at will help you fulfill your requirements, will help you reach your goal. So that's the first thing that I would recommend, is sit down and figure out, why are we looking for an online class? Once you know that, then you'll know what to look for, right? So there are kind of a list of things to look for. The first one is interactivity. If the class is not interactive, if it's just a teacher talking at the kids, there's no point in that, right? You can do that asynchronously. You can have them watch videos. You can have them do workbooks. You can have them do apps on your phone or on their tablet or whatever. You don't need a live online class that isn't going to get them involved in the learning process. It's the point of an online class. For whatever reason you don't have access to, or you can't get to a live class, it's convenient, it's safe, it's available, right? There are lots of reasons why online works better than an in-person class for a lot of people. So it needs to be interactive. If it's just a grown-up talking at them, there's no point. So shy away from anything where the teacher uses PowerPoints, right? Notice that I didn't get on and immediately share my screen with a PowerPoint presentation and have my little talking head in the corner. There's a reason for that, right? So when what you're looking at is not a human face, you don't process the information in the same way. It doesn't feel like communication, right? It doesn't feel interactive. So as beautiful as some PowerPoint presentations can be, they're not made for learning. They're not made for teaching, right? They're made for presenting, and presenting is its thing and teaching is a different thing, right? So stay away from classes and teachers who rely heavily or even like bring out PowerPoints, because there's just really no reason to use a PowerPoint in an online class at all. Just my point of view as someone who's really successful at doing it. So the other thing is that when you're doing an online class, chances are you're on Zoom. If you're not on Zoom, you could be on Teams or, whatever. You're on some kind of video conference platform, basically. And a lot of teachers will require that all of the students mute themselves until it's their turn to talk. There's a problem with that, though. So the problem is that when you have a thought, right? And then you have to take the time to find your cursor, figure out how to unmute yourself, even if it's just pressing the space bar, which is something that is really, it's a fast way of doing it, but it doesn't work on every device because tablets, smartphones don't have space bars, right? And then you have to just get in the habit of that's how you do it. And then sometimes the settings are different, so the space bar does something else. Anyway, the process of interrupting your thought to have to figure out how to unmute, and then you might need to raise your hand and then be acknowledged and then unmute, and then there's a little delay, right? You can't start talking immediately. There's maybe a 1.5 second delay. So then you have to wait to be unmuted, and then you can talk, right? And then in order for the next person to talk, you have to acknowledge in some way that you're finished talking, and then mute yourself, and then the other person gets permission to unmute themselves. You waste a ton of class time doing that in this transition from one speaker to the next. Now, that's not to say that muting doesn't have its purpose. There are times when, if you're in a very loud background noise situation, when the right thing to do is to mute yourself, right? I do it by choice when I need to. I've had to mute some students occasionally because the background noise was so much that was disrupting the flow of class. But generally speaking, if the default is everybody has to be muted all the time, it slows down the class and it makes it feel less like an interaction. It makes it feel like some other thing, which is one of the things that contributes to what they call like Zoom fatigue, right? Is this idea that you have to be like super hyper vigilant all the time, that you're not stepping on each other's toes. The majority of my classes, we stay unmuted all the time, and we very rarely have a problem with people talking over each other, or with people talking over each other and not recognizing it and having one person stop and say, sorry, you go first, and then I'll go next. By not muting, though, not having that default mute, it really, really helps it feel like a fun, live, interactive, engaging activity. And that's what you want in an online class, because if you're not engaged, you are not learning, and especially with kids, right? So the younger they are, the faster they're off doing something else. And once you lose them, you're not getting them back, right? So super, super important. The other thing is the format of the class should be short teacher talk, long student activity. So there is a rule in neuroscience that we have discovered that adults can listen to anybody, talk about one thing for a maximum of 10 minutes. And then your mind starts to wander. That attention span decreases incrementally with your developmental stage, right? So if you have a class for teens and adults, the teacher wants to spend maximum 10 minutes talking. If you have a class for anybody younger than that, they need to spend a proportionately less short time talking, right? So basically what you're going to do as a teacher is you're going to give them some sort of information that they need to be able to do the activity. And then you're going to throw them into an activity, and they're going to be doing stuff. They're going to be pretending, they're going to be moving around, they're going to be dancing, they're going to be singing, they're going to be making stuff, they're going to be playing a game, they're going to be discussing something, right? But it should be student focused. That's really, really important. Materials, right? So there should be some sort of materials with the class. The class may well provide materials, especially if they're digital. Oftentimes, like with our classes, we very rarely ask you to provide materials unless it's some kind of art or science thing that that you have to have physical materials for. And sometimes we even provide physical materials. But you want to have some sort of mention of materials in there, because otherwise, what are they going to be doing, right? They're going to be sitting there and listening. And sitting there and listening is not the same as learning. You probably already know that because that's why you homeschool, right? Flexibility. Flexibility is another really, really important dimension of an online class, right? So classes that have pages and pages of detailed explanations and descriptions of exactly what they're going to do and schedules that they're going to live by, and you're in lesson 1 you're going to be doing this, and lesson 2 you're going to be doing this, and lesson 3 you're going to be doing this. They are not student responsive classes. Those are classes that mimic building school. Those are classes where the teacher has created a plan, right, to do something, and they come, no matter what happens, they are going to try and stick to that plan, right? Because that's what they've decided they're going to do. And they've told you, they've sold this class based on this is what we're going to do, right? So this is where you have a situation where one of two things happens. It's very rare that any class sticks to the prescribed teaching plan. Right? I can tell you, I've taught so many classes on every level, every age group. Classes almost never fit into what you've planned, right? One of two things happens. Either the class is really, really fast and you finish everything that you had planned to do in 15 minutes. Well, if you've sold a half hour, 45-minute, 55-minute class, and you finished what you had sold them that you were going to do in 15 minutes, as a teacher, now what do you do? Right? Because you can't go on, because then the students who maybe didn't make it to attend the class assume that you've covered a certain amount of material, right? And now you've covered more material than that. And then you're going to end up at the end of your semester not having anything left to do. So that's where you get teachers who will teach for 15, 20 minutes and then be like, all right, well, that's all we have to do today, and end class, right? And parents get upset because, right, if you're using this class as a way to keep your child entertained and engaged in something that is productive while you're doing something else, and now all of a sudden your 55-minute window is 20 minutes, that's a problem, right? So that's one of the things. If you see, this is what we're going to do, this is what we're going to do, this is what we're going to do, that's probably not a very good online class. You want to look for online classes where they say, we're going to generally work on these things, right? These are the kinds of skills that we're going to try and cover, but we're going to work at the pace of the students, right? Because the other side of it is you have a group of students who aren't picking things up in your allotted time, right? And so you have one of two options. You either just go, oh, well, they're just not going to get it, and you move on to the next thing, which is a horrible choice in most situations, right? Which is probably also why you're homeschooling, because you don't like that schools do that. Schools do that because they have a schedule they have to keep, right? So you want a teacher who can recognize, they don't really have this yet. So instead of moving on to the next thing in the next class, we're going to continue working on this from a different perspective. We're going to practice it in a different way. Maybe we add a little something to it. That's the next thing that we're going to do. Or maybe we fold in skills that seem to be missing, that are keeping them from being able to acquire this particular objective, right? But that flexibility is essential. Otherwise, you are not teaching students. You are presenting information. And that is not a class, online or offline. So then the next thing that I think is super, super important is that the organization or the teacher presents their plan to use positive and peaceful classroom management, right? Because research shows that it's super, super essential to having a productive learning environment. Think about it. If you get into a class and the first thing the teacher does is lay out the rules and the punishments and the consequences, you're not focused on learning. You're not focused on being excited about what you're going to learn anymore. Now you're focused on not getting in trouble. Right? So that's one of the things. The other thing is that by providing a positive, peaceful atmosphere, you actually prevent a whole lot of unwanted behavior anyway. I almost never have behavior problems in my online classes. Literally, I've been teaching online almost full time for about 5 years straight. Almost never have a behavior problem. I can count maybe 3 times I've had behavior problems. And they were always in that student's first class with me. There you go. That's all it takes. And also then that makes it an inviting, warm environment where the kids feel safe, right? You have to feel safe in order to be able to learn. And just because you're at home where people couldn't like physically attack you, if that was, if that's a concern, which for some people it genuinely is, right? But even online, there are ways that people can be harmful, right? But if you set up the situation so that it's safe to begin with, you let people know, I see you, I value you for who you are, all of you. I'm going to listen to you. I care about who you are. I care about what your needs are. I care about how you're feeling. I care about what you think. It's okay to have feelings. It's okay to express them in a productive way, right? That kind of, and that goes back to interactivity, goes back to flexibility. It goes back to short teacher talk. All of these things are embedded in positive, peaceful classroom management. And the last thing I'll leave you with is that it should be a class that has a developmentally appropriate time span, right? So a 90-minute class for 3 to 6 year olds, not developmentally appropriate. I can tell you right now, you're going to get a 30-minute class is going to be productive for that age group. When you get to older kids, then probably 40-45 minutes is appropriate up until about middle school. Middle schoolers can start doing 55-minute classes, and then teenagers can focus for about 90 minutes at a time. But you don't want to be like, ooh, this class is going to keep them engaged for 2 hours. If they're 7, that is not going to happen. They're going to be engaged for 40 minutes and then they're going to be off doing something else, wasting your money and not giving you the time that you wanted, right? So you're better off doing shorter classes, scheduling in a break for yourself because you need to take a break from whatever you're doing too. And giving them a snack, getting them to use the bathroom, and then getting them into a different class and building that 2-hour time frame for yourself that way with breaks in between. So anyway, I hope that was helpful. I hope that I added something to your understanding of online classes and how you can get the most out of them. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me anytime. Again, my name is Meredith Kaunitz, and my company is Art Play Learn. You can reach out to me at info@artplaylearn.com. I'll put a little splash up there at the end so that you can see it. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, pretty much anywhere. Feel free to reach out. I love helping parents fulfill their needs anytime. Thank you.